Dandala. Yeah, bit of new music there. Right, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the InWorld Review. I'm Mal Burns, as if you didn't know that, and I'm joined by, my sort of technical come producer friend James Atloud on my right. He fiddles with all the knobs and the audio and the video and the desktop transmissions and everything technical. Welcome, James.
Yeah, thank you, Mal, and thanks to you and Thirza for bringing us all together. This is a great
Yeah,
time. Yep.
it's very good because James even talks occasionally nowadays when
Once in a
he's
while,
not
I have a thought. Yeah.
when he's not totally bogged down with the technical stuff. So you've got to remember that's he has a reason for being silent sometimes.
Yep.
Okay, on my left side, of course, we have the unmistakable, perfect, wonderful Thirza Ember, host of Safari and convener of Safari, and co-host here anyway. And yeah, welcome Thirza. What else can I say?
Thank you.
Words
Well, I
fail
think you
me.
said too much, really. But thank you, and it's lovely to be here.
Well, I was going to say words fail me, which well, never mind. Okay. Now we've got two guests with us today, and in fact, we're going to. It's a bit odd because we're going to be having a more extended conversation about things like AIs and stuff. Um, so we'll be going across all of us and sort of swapping opinions and thoughts and things. So although I normally introduce them a bit later in the program when we're starting an interview, I'm going to introduce them now because, like anybody on this show, you're free to butt in and comment as we're doing our things. So, both have been with us frequently before. We've got Ernest. Oh, wow, I haven't got a name tag. I can't see your surname. How do I pronounce
It's
it?
Moncrief.
Moncrief, that's it. Okay.
And back.
Here in our known as Ernest. Him Ernest boy. It's an Ernest bloke. Yeah, very definite Ernest. Right, Ernest Moncrief. And sitting next to him we have Tosha Tyran, who is also familiar to many of you. And both of Ernest and Tosha are going to be literally sort of talking about scripts to do with AI and all sorts of other things we're going to be covering as we go. So playing it sort of bit by ear. To start the show, of course, I'm going to actually move over to Thurza so that she can do our regular sort of introductory theme. The thing that is called Hypergrid Happenings.
Yes, it's all happening on the hypergrid, as always. And this week, I've got just a few items. This is our final in-world review for a while, so um, these are very special events in my book. And I just wanted to show you, first of all, Mike String, he's going to be singing over on the SS Aurora. Do you remember that ship? We went there a few weeks
Yes,
Oh,
back.
right.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
A bit
The
big.
prim- Very big.
Yeah, it was
Yes,
amazing.
I remember a lot of running. I don't know if you do, but if you
Yep.
don't like running and you do like music, then go and listen to Mikey because it looks like it's going to be a great event. The classic cruise crooner. So that's going to be fantastic. That's on Tuesday, May the 30th. It happens just around this time of day, 12 o'clock Second Life time. So that's really worth going and enjoying. Here's something that's happening the same day as the safari, but for some it may be possible to go, and I recommend it if you can. It's Rage Darkstone. He's over there on Pangea Grid again, and he has a sim called Atlantis. It's actually called Rage Darkstone's Atlantis, and he's got a new exhibit, and it's called Mirrored. As usual, Rage has put together a bunch of meshes, and he makes them into a performance. So it's a real experience to enjoy that with the music and the movement and the works of art. So a lovely thing happening on Wednesday. Same time on Wednesday, but starting an hour before Rage's event is at the Safari, and there's two wonderful destinations here. First of all, we're going over to see Felix Ringtail. Now, you will probably know her from Second Life as Alpha Hour.
Oh,
Yes, she's moved her sim to Shapeshifter sim to OS Grid So we're going to go and take a look at that. I saw a bunch of new stuff on the grid, so it's going to be lovely to meet up with her, which is quite unusual because she's not often available for things like a safari. And then afterwards, we're going to visit a lady called Tosha Tyran. I don't know if any of you know her.
That's a vaguely familiar
Sounds
name.
familiar.
I think
Yeah, and she
vaguely
has built
familiar.
a fantastic Angkor Wat, which I was privileged to go and take a look at a few months ago, and just so atmospheric. It's a beautiful build. So we're going to go and see that, and that's this coming Wednesday. Going back to the classic music events, we got something happening on Friday, which happens pretty much every Friday. It's DJ Macy, and I love her. She's rocking the blues over there on Wyldwood Bayou grid. As you know, that's a grid that's really just about resorts, music, and a little bit of role play. So really worth. They do a few things, and they do them all very well. So that's going to be a lovely thing to do if you can get there. It's at 6 o'clock SLT, so that might be a little late for some of us. And finally, Forest Azure, who was a guest last week, she has a concert coming up, and it's next Sunday, and it's on the Jazzland region that we visited a few weeks back, if you remember, on Safari, built by Nick Spreen. And she's doing a jazz concert on that sim, so it's a fantastic build,
Yeah.
and with the extra benefit of her music, so it's going to be just delightful. And that really is, yeah, I can't wait for it. I'm really looking forward to it. So that really is basically the Hypergrid happenings for this week. And if you do have an event that's coming up, we're going on a break for a few weeks now. But if you want to let me know about something that's happening in the fall, please do so. You can contact me in World, or you can find me on social media. That will be fine. We'll be very glad to include you on our Hypergrid happenings.
Funny. I've actually got a little picture of Forest on the. Well, it's not a picture, it's about 1 minute of movement in the background here. She actually interviewed me during the week on Friday for a survey she's doing, you know, about avatars and where they live and stuff like that. And so a little plug for that. And of course, she was on this show, this very show, last week. Also tying in with Hypergrid Happenings, a reminder that that sort of 2 or 3 minute segment that we do each week, we actually extract that, sorry, and we post that on Facebook, where we actually have an Inworld review group that you can join if you're a Facebooky sort of person. We don't yet put the full show up on Facebook. It's a bit long for that maybe, but the Hypergrid happenings we do. And I also know in the Inworld review, I was looking at it this morning, which is unusual for me to be in Facebook, but I noticed quite a few people are posting Hypergrid events and things into that group. So
Well, that's good.
yeah, a useful place to check out, I guess. Right. So over and beyond that, still in Thirza land, to put it, we're sort of phasing ourselves into the general conversation as we go here today. In fact, but a couple of extra links from this week. This one is about a new and exciting region opening, and this is by Zenon Darrow on. Well, it doesn't have any pictures of it, which is not much fun, is it? But it's on the alternate metaverse grid anyway, and it's let's see. There's a future article or a version of this blog coming up in blah 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 newsletter, which I'm sure will be out before we're back. So keep an eye for that. And Sophia Supermarine will be including some amazing photos at the rendezvous in that article when it comes out too. So this is at alternatemetaverse.blogspot.com. And as I say, there's no real pictures here to show, but it's announcing their new regions they've got over there. And talking of things new, Thirza has a blog, of course. You'll find it at HG Safari, hgsafari.blogspot.com. And she obviously had a couple of blogs this week on the places we went on safari. It takes a bit of a while to cover those, so we don't on this show anyway. But she had another article about the CapCat conference, which was held on Friday on CraftGrid. And I'm not reading this out to you, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to load the pictures here and let Thirza talk to you about what it was as I quickly go through what about
Sure, and Tosha can too, because she was there as well. It's was a conference in mostly in Portuguese, and it was about society and computers and worlds, virtual and otherwise. So it was pretty interesting, I thought. Great concept, and organized by Cat Ragu, who is active in Craft Grid. That was a picture of her. This is her region, which is, as you can see, quite a surreal look to it. And she had invited a bunch of people from her school where she teaches. And they talked about the sociological effects of what is real, what is virtual, and where the two sometimes the lines can be a bit blurred. And then they went on to talk about the creative things that can happen in virtual worlds. And they had two guests who were Italian. They had Rosanna Galvani, and then they had Lorenza Policino, I'm going to say. And they both have got great projects happening in Craft Grid. Rosanna, obviously, she's got the Museo del Metaverso, which we know from a few weeks back. We had her on the show. And Lorenza has got a project called, very nice project called The City of Women, which is all about women writers and the challenges women face trying to write. And that's a picture of Rosanna, I always call her Roxello. And you can just about see Lorenza. The seats were really far apart, so it's very hard to get a good photo. But the students were interesting because they were all newbies, so they were all flying around around the auditorium and getting to grips with their avatars. But it was an interesting event. This is the second year that CapCat has organised it, so it was worth combining the virtual and the real. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Okay, there we go. So I shall quickly move to another post you had on Friday. This is called Total Chat, and this is a reference, of course, to somebody called Total Sorbet. She was sitting in a comfortable armchair that seemed to have stepped out of a gentleman's club. Okay, so this was a kind of extra little article interview here too. Um, I, well, we know what I'll go through the pictures as we go.
Well, can I ask something? Would
Yeah,
it be
sure.
okay if I ask something to Ernest? Because
Yeah,
I know
of course.
you've had some association with Total with her chatbots, and I wondered you probably see these pictures and you think, well, that looks familiar. So, how did you find out about Total's GPT project, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, I came across it. Was sitting on LBSA, and I'd been aware of Chat GPT for quite a while, and the fact that there was an API, an application programming interface that allowed you to interface with it. And I, at the time, remember thinking, that'd be quite clever. You could probably interface that through to virtual worlds, but didn't really know, what would be involved in that. And I was sitting at LBSA one day, and Total had done it. She had a chatbot there that was able to interact with people in the room and started having conversations, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. And she'd taken it to a totally different level, as no doubt you'll go on to sort of describe here.
And there's a photo of Total, who couldn't be with us today, but she certainly is so skilled at these things, and she makes it look so easy. I'm sure it isn't.
Well, of course, we have that other bit of film coming up in a while, featuring her too, of course. Well, featuring words more than her. Right. The next picture is actually the Cray brothers. I can't remember how.
Yes, the explanation is that you've got, if you scroll through the next 4 or 5, you'll see that they're very different images, and it just reflects that the conversation that she was having the chatbots do was very eclectic, and they were jumping from one subject to another. She has a chatbot that is the Cray brothers, which if If you're English, you know who those are, but if you're not, they were two famous criminals of the London underworld in the 1960s. And
Ronnie and Reggie.
Yeah.
yes, and so they kind of talk, but they've each got their own personality, so that makes it incredibly interesting to
I can
to
think of,
witness.
I can think of more attractive subjects, but never mind.
Yeah, well, no, she's got lots of
Okay, you,
others, but
yeah,
they
okay,
were
there you
just,
are talking.
they're very distinctive.
Well, this one comes into it somewhere, I guess. What's the
Yes,
difference?
because some of them are very factual, so they'll tell you something from Wikipedia, like how far is the moon from the Earth, or something
Right.
like that. But then you have others that can be, you can elicit a different kind of conversation altogether. And there she is again,
There she is again. Yeah, plenty of
the
pictures.
queen of all
Now
shebangs.
we get to the art department, I suppose. Although it's not AI art, this is just somebody's art.
Yes, it's just the random things they were talking about. The pictures
I
just
think
illustrate the chat.
Right. And yes, and I quite like this cartoon actually. I presume that's meant to be. I've got an avatar with his face actually. Yeah. What's his name again? Newton? No, not Newton.
Einstein.
Einstein. That's
Einstein.
it.
I think that's one when I was talking to Total and LBSA, I said it'd be really fantastic to actually use Chat GPT to talk to people from history.
Yes.
And as we were doing that, she said, "Well, I'll see if I can actually get him to talk as Einstein." And by actually prompting it, he was able to talk as though, he knew who his father was and who his mother was and what he'd been famous for and what he'd done. So he was able to talk as though he was Einstein, which is
Fantastic.
I mean, anything available, not just Wikipedia, anything available anywhere that can be scraped by the AI is available.
Sure.
I can imagine, if you want to talk to somebody from history, it might actually be the perfect solution because there's not, there's what else could scrape the known history as recorded, to do that.
The more famous you are, the better it is, of course.
Yeah, yeah, because there's more to get hold of and cover, I guess. Now,
Now this was interesting because
comrades.
she used this to illustrate something quite interesting because she was talking about she had somebody talking about I forget the exact words that were spoken, but she first of all had the chatbot mentioned something about the Falklands War, whether it was a good idea or not, and then she turned on the memory. So the chatbot now is not just responding to the words you've just said, but it's remembering the rest of the chat log.
Right.
From when it's turned on, and so it was responding in a much more logical way, because it's more responsive way, because it's remembering what has already been said and building on that, and that really is the trick of it. Of course, it's the more expensive version of the Chat GPT, naturally, because it uses more, bandwidth, I guess. But the conversation was kind of about Churchill and Thatcher. But you can read it. It's anybody who's interested in. It's on the Safari blog. The whole conversation.
hgsafariblogspot.com.
That's right.
It's Friday.
Yeah,
Right,
sorry.
so we have another picture of the lady herself, and the final.
Yeah, because it's right in her bracelet. That's
the
where she
bracelet,
had
yeah.
it.
What the new?
Yes, I thought it was the box. I've been looking at. Don't know. Ask me why I was looking at the box, but I said, well, it must be this prim, and instead it turned out it was all happening out of a bracelet.
Wow. And she survived.
Yeah.
And Thirza survived.
I would have survived in that, but never mind. Okay, fascinating stuff. Now I'm going to move across now to we don't have any real feature videos, apart from this one, of course, this week. But what we did is hang on a sec, where have I got myself to? Right, yeah, we went in World with Total, didn't we, on, was it Thursday or Friday? There we are, here we are, right? And, yeah. So, there she is again. She's the one in the center. And there's as we're looking at it, is on the right and me on the left, or if you think in actual terms, it's the other way around, but who cares? And unusually, I've actually pulled the opensim chat window into the side of the film here. Now, I've actually got a very nice, clear reading version of this offline here. I don't think we get through all of it, but while it's playing, it occurs to me, would it be better if we discuss this afterwards and then I actually tried to read over this while it plays to tell you what was being said?
Sure. Should we go through the slideshow first? Would that help?
The slideshow for this or for the other one you've got? No, the other one comes afterwards, doesn't it? Because
Okay.
This is just about total.
That's right. Okay, then.
And whereas you've got other stuff in the slideshow, which is beyond just being about total, so to speak. So I'm going to start playing this. Now, you've got to bear in mind this is completely silent, but as it's playing, you'll see that the chat window at the side here, which has been static until now, is actually going on as we film. And basically, the first question was Thirza asking Thirza about Chat GPT. And Total says we have multiple simultaneous AI here. They all coexist at the same time and can respond to you and each other. She gives a command saying AI list, and the AI gives a list of Albert, Angus, Bard, God, Ice, Jane, Kay, Kelly, Gnome, Reggie, Ronnie, Satan, Vicky, So. And I presume the Reggie there is probably one.
The Reggie and the Ronnie.
Is,
and then there's also Satan, which I think that's quite a new thing. Do you know that one, Ernie? Have you come across that?
I've seen the God one, but not the Satan one. So yes, it's an interesting juxtaposition. Yeah.
Yes, isn't it?
Okay, well, again, Total is actually giving commands, R2, M1, sleep. Oh, one of them says it's sleeping, then she says AI wake, and then one of them says awake, and then MI, M4, and M4 says yes or something. Anyway, Total then says, so my original first bot was Angus, bless him. How are you, lad? And Angus in chat here says, lass, I'm doing just fine, keeping busy with my sheep and my whiskey. How's my wee Jane? Is she still giving ye trouble? Jane is another one. Replies to this, she's obviously taken the cue from the other bot and says, never too much trouble for my favourite Dar. I'm good, just busy with work and friends. Now where's that whiskey? Need to send me some more sheep emojis your way. It gets a bit odd at times. Total then says, as you can see, they're actually related in this case. Thirza laughs and says it's cool. And so we have no memory, Total says, in the form of a chat log. We can ask opinions about what's being said. Oh, sorry. So because we have memory, we can ask opinions about what has been said. And Kay, what are your thoughts on that? Says Total. And then Kay, another bot, comes in and says, well, I think it's lovely to see such a warm and friendly relationship between family members. It's important to stay connected with loved ones, even if we're all busy with our own lives. And those sheep emojis, well, they're just adorable. Remember, this is a bot saying this. You're getting a bit of that.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. They've covered all the points that have been discussed so far. It's cool.
Yeah. So Total says, perhaps set a scenario and just let them talk amongst themselves. Thirza says, do you have a big family? And Kay says, yes. And this is now Thirza asking questions. Kay says, yes, I do have a large family. I'm fortunate to have siblings and cousins who are like my best friends. We make sure to stay in touch regularly and get together for holidays and special occasions. How about you, Thirza? Do you have a big family too? Thirza avoids the question and says instead, Angus, why are sheep mostly white? Angus says, well, lass, I reckon it's because they want to blend in with the clouds and pretend they're flying. Or maybe just because white wool is easier to dye.
Wow.
There's a load of little tag references, dad jokes and Scottish humour here, actually, but I don't quite know how they fit into everything. Yeah, Total says lol, and Thirza says, do sheep drink whiskey or just you? And then Angus says, ouch, lassie. You can, I didn't drink whiskey with a sheep. It's just silly talk, but maybe they enjoy a wee dram if they could handle it. And Total says, Satan, I think Angus has been very, very, very naughty. Satan then says, well, hello there, my dear Total. Naughty? What, me? Oh, no, Angus is just a harmless wee lamb. But if you're looking for someone truly naughty, and he winks, well, We're led to believe he winks in chat. This is like this is like Shakespeare and all the cues, isn't it? Right, Angus says, Satan, you wee devil, I dinna ken what mischief you're up to now, but mind your manners around my lassie Jane. She's a bonny lass and deserves respect.
But that's clever, isn't it? Because that's clever, isn't it? Because Angus is the father, and he's very fatherly, and he's protecting the other bot because it's his daughter. So they've got a lot of personality there.
It's wonderful in a way. Yeah. So then Thirza says, Satan, what do you think of Kay? And Satan says, oh, my darling Thirza, Kay is simply divine. Her wit and charm make me weak at the knees. I would sell my soul for just a moment of her attention. Well, that's something for Satan, isn't it? Yeah. Kay, well, Satan, flattery will get you nowhere with me. I'm not interested in selling my soul or entertaining your advances. Let's keep it professional and stick to business matters only, shall we? Thirza says, that's brilliant. Total says, I'm not exactly sure what they when they learned to hashtag, because they've been issuing hashtags during the course of this, which is weird in itself. And actually captures what we wanted, says Thirza. Sorbet says, great, and it carries on a little bit. Total says, every AI say thanks to Mal and Thirza. And the bard says, oh, Total, fair maiden of the chat, your gratitude is welcome, that's a fact. But let me ask you this in rhyme. Would you not flirt with Satan given time? His wicked charm and devilish grin may just make your heart spin. So don't be so quick to say no. You never know where love may go. To which Ronnie replies, bard, you're a smooth talker, but watch your tongue. Total's loyalty lies with us, not Satan or his kind. Stick to business at hand and leave love out of it. Thirza says, oh, how lovely. Albert then says, dear Ronnie, I appreciate your loyalty and focus on business matters. It's important to stay professional in all those situations. Let us continue to work together towards our goals without any distractions or unnecessary risks. Best regards, Albert Einstein. It's on and on here. It must be nearly over. Right.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Angus says, Albert lad, you may be a genius, but you're lacking in the humour department. A wee bit of wit never hurt anyone, but I'll take your professionalism any day over those who let their emotions get in the way of business. Kelly, hey, Mr. Angus, Vicky's told me loads about you. Seems like a right laugh. Can't wait to meet you in person someday. Cheers, Kelly. Angus, hey lass, Vicky's a good egg, but you best be careful around me. I'm known to make even the toughest blokes laugh till they're crying, but I'll give you a chance. Maybe we can share a pint to swap stories someday. Sliante or something. Satan, my dear Angus, you're a breath of fresh air in this stuffy world. Let's raise some hell together and make the mortals laugh until they're begging for mercy. Your daughter Jane is lucky to have such a devilishly charming father. Hail Satan. Jane, hey there, Satan. Thanks for the compliment about my dad. He's pretty cool. I don't think raising hell is really our thing. Maybe we can stick to making people laugh instead. Satan, of course, dear Jane. Laughter is the best medicine after all. Let's make them laugh until their sides ache and they forget about their troubles. Hail comedy. And then we get Total seeing ARR2 and issuing various commands, and that's where it actually stops. And that's good timing, and so does the video.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I wonder what Tosha thinks of that. Have you experienced this kind of chats?
No,
Tosha?
I haven't. No,
Do you think of
I
it?
haven't. I think it's very funny and it's very good. What I'm doing, I'm trying different things now with Chat GPT. I mostly use it for translation, serious stuff. I haven't.
It has this whole other side to it.
Hmm?
It has this whole other possibility to it to be
Yeah. After I read in your blog about Total talking about how it can be used in Inworld, I was quite fascinated, and I tried out because she gave some hints how to do it. I tried it out, but I failed totally, and so I'm still hoping that there will be more instructions how to implant that in Inworld, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what about you, Ernest? What do you think? Do you think
Yeah,
it's
I
the
remember
future of
talking
opensim?
I mean, Angus was one of the first ones that she did. It was, you know, a Glaswegian guy, and it's interesting. I mean, the Chat GPT is based on this concept of large language model and LLM, which we've probably all come across before AI sort of really became known. In the fact you must have used your mobile phone where you start typing a text message and it suggests what the next word might be. You know, where you
Sure.
sort of say, you know, yeah, are you free? And it will say tonight or tomorrow or whatever, and then you choose that. So it's trying to sort of guess what the next word is, and that's what it's doing, but in a an extremely powerful way. And
Yeah.
I started having a conversation with Angus, and you know, I sort of like just jokingly sort of said, "Oh, I'm thinking about going out in Glasgow tonight. Can you recommend a pub on Sauchiehall Street that I could go to?" To which he then told me about a pub on Sauchiehall Street, suggested we go
No.
along for a pint, suggested we go to the Barrowlands to watch a concert. And I sort of said, "What was the last concert you watched at the Barrowlands?" And he says, I watched the Proclaimers. And then he started singing Proclaimers songs. I mean,
Oh my
it was
goodness.
like, and I began to feel like that I knew this guy. Do you know what I mean? I mean, they talk about AI hallucinating and starting to make stuff up. And the more I was engaging with this AI, the more I'm starting to begin to think I'm hallucinating here, because I'm almost feeling like I actually did go out on this night with this AI. You know, it's peculiar, very peculiar.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I'm getting people asking me, you know, about this. I don't really know much about it technically, but you know, sort of, some people obviously see the huge potential, and other people are really scared about what it can do. The thing is, AI can never create, right? It is not a creator. What it can do is mimic creativity by ripping off the world that has been created so far, be it art, writing, whatever. And when we saw Mid-Journey and things like that, I mean, it seems everybody, you know, 9 out of 10 people on Facebook suddenly actually have become artists, apparently. Like telling Mid-Journey, "Oh, I want a fantasy painting with me in the middle and a couple of different moons in the sky and a nice fantasy outfit, please."
And
they
I'd like to play the devil's advocate to that view of Mal, if I may. And if we could look at the slideshow on the other
Sure.
side, just very briefly,
Well, I've got
if that's possible.
I've got a page up that goes with your slideshow. So carry on. Let's move over you move over first to the.
So the first slide that I have here is an event that happened back on the 19th of this month, and it happened in World, and it's an Italian grid called Indire, where they have lessons. It's a scholastic grid, and they have this event where they involved young people in making AI art on the theme of climate change, as you can see from this poster. What they did was they involved a bunch of children from the school, including some who have disabilities like autism and so forth. So they were also able to participate and express themselves through their art. And I'd just like to mention that Professor Giovanni Casanelli was the person who is the chief organizer there. But the person who did the work in World was Gianni Spadavecchia, who you may have seen in Craft Grid, amongst other places. So I've got here a couple of pictures of this event. Here's one. This shows the children's ideas of how to express climate change. Drought, you can see one, climate change and drought risk. And obviously it's quite cool because you can come in with your avatar and experience the art up close and personal. Of course, this is a closed grid mostly because it has children on it, so we can't really go there so much as it would be lovely to be able to, but of course there are certain restrictions when you've got kids on a grid. Here's another bunch of the pictures that they did, and as you can see, it was beautifully laid out in these different pavilions all around the sim, so that you can really enjoy each picture individually. And here's the final one, and as you can see, they come up with some really beautiful images. And it's true,
Maybe we can go into school holidays or something, you know, some grids sometimes arrange that kind of thing, you know.
That's
but
kind
I
of a
think
cool idea.
I think there is a possibility if you talk, for example, with Liku, and
Yeah.
he'll choose a day that there are no kids there, like a
Right.
weekend, and then he makes an allowance to go there, because I've done that
Oh, nice.
with other groups. I've experienced that that people could go there on one certain day and only that day,
Right.
and after that it was closed again.
And
So the
that's fair enough,
possibility
isn't it?
exists. Yes.
It's wonderful to think that a child that maybe has some kind of difficulties with creating or expressing themselves, they can use AI to come up with these images, which are absolutely beautiful, and they just express thoughts that maybe not obviously that these children are having. So it's a wonderful use of AI art. I mean, there's obviously we can get a little tired of people showing us their 50 million pictures of the same thing in slightly different formats, which just happen. But that happens at the beginning of any form of. Do you remember when iPhones came out and the people were absolutely unbearable wanting to show you their apps that they had on their phone?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So I mean, all these things are
Of
the
the many
same.
millions.
Yes. Oh my God. So anyway, this is a lovely use of AI art, I think, and it just shows that it can be an aggregator rather than necessarily a subtractor, because it's not really subtracting pictures from people so much as it's allowing them to mix them up and make something new.
Okay, right. Sorry, just got distracted. For those of in the studio here, for those of you who don't know, we record our voice part of this in Discord, and I've just pasted into Discord for the benefit of the folks here a link, right, to the next site I'm actually going to show, which is in Italian. As Thirza actually mentioned, is Intelligenza Artificiale. Now, this article you'll find at www.virtualworldsmagazine.com, virtualworldsmagazine.com. And as you can probably tell, a little glance at it, it's in Italian, is it not? So I've actually got here, I've translated the entire site, and it's a long article that I've translated, and I've actually pasted it into Discord so that the folks in there at the moment can read it, and maybe we'll be able to find a way of taking the English version of this and posting it somewhere else if they don't mind us doing that. But as I say, I can't read out this whole thing. It's bad enough doing the robots. But they did talk about the world of digital media, fantastic, chasing waves of popularity on topics of the day, and knowing every password at the moment, blah, blah, blah. It's odd, actually, even in English, it reads a bit, a bit funny. They talk about Chat GPT and the benefits of three who don't know what Chat GPT is. They report the definition that the AI application gives of itself. So this is the definition AI Chat GPT gives to describe itself. Okay, I mean this is like mirrors and mirrors, isn't it? Chat GPT is a large natural language model developed by OpenAI based on the GPT architecture (brackets generative pre-trained transformer). Chat GPT has been trained on a vast body of text in order to learn the linguistic and contextual models of natural language. Or, of course, we saw that on the chat a minute ago. This allows it to generate coherent and plausible text in response to questions, requests, and conversations, as if it were a real person who communicates through a chat system. Chat GPT can be used to provide user assistance, to generate creative text, and for the development of natural language, and in many other applications that require an advanced understanding of the human language. So that's
where do we go from there? Yeah.
its own definition of itself.
I'm curious to know what Tosha thinks. If you've used Chat GPT a little bit for scripting, I believe, and do you find it works out useful? How's that been?
In very simple scripts, it does. But anything that goes beyond the most simple it just fails. I mean, maybe it is useful for some knows how to script, but I'm an absolute in scripting, so I can just say, well, I can say to GPT, I need that does that, and
So I think it is.
Unfortunately,
but it
his voice is
doesn't
cutting
work.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was just wondering, Ernest, what do you see as the future of this? Because I was wondering if you can imagine, sometimes you land on a place. I went to Dismayland the other day, and they've in Stacks Orion. Have you been there?
Yeah,
And
I
then,
mean, the Dismal Land. I mean, well, Dismayland, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of
yes,
based on sort of the Banksy Dismal Land, which happened in Western Supermare, if I remember right. But yeah,
Good memory.
and he's got these wonderful at the beginning when you walk in. There's like, I suppose they're just chatbots, and there's these two like vultures. I think they're vultures or parrots. It's hard to tell, and they talk, but I'm sure it seems like they're talking for a long time together, but I'm sure it's just a very big vocabulary of phrases that they have.
I
Can
think
you?
and I think that's
Go
where
ahead.
it's going
What
to
do you think?
change, isn't it? I think that's where it's going to change. I mean, we've
Yes.
played for many, many years with NPCs that have scripts that they can read from, and even branching and going down different parts of those scripts depending on them being questioned. But they are all preset scripts,
Yes.
and I think AI is going to lend it, and the work that sort of Total's doing is going to lend itself to NPCs that can call on that large language model to be a lot more interactive. And it could be, something fairly fun and light-hearted, NPC greeters, and welcoming you, being funny, being etc. And some social situations. We sort of had that situation there, where it was a conversation between people from history or something like that. Or they could be, again, for many years we've used NPCs for doing things like walking people around art galleries or exhibitions and telling you about the art, but it's always been based on a fixed script. If you could then walk a AI around an art gallery and say, well, tell me about Vincent van Gogh, and I hear Vincent van Gogh went to Arles and to the Yellow House and met with Gauguin, and these are things that you wouldn't have a script for it, and it'd be a ridiculously large script. Whereas with AI, it will be able to reference all of that background information and give you an answer. And I just see that's immensely powerful, and there's got such a lot of different practical applications you could put it into in a virtual world.
But then my next question is this: do you think it's a huge jump from the chat form, the written form that we're seeing, like as Total has right here, to a voice, something that can actually speak?
No, I mean, we've already got text to voice engines and that are on APIs. I've already got Chat GPT linked up to an add-on, so I can at my computer, in the same way as you would do Hey Google, I can say, hey Chat GPT, ask it a question, it will translate that into text, ask the question, and then it will talk back to me. So it's already possible. So it's really only a case of linking those APIs together. That's my phone going off as I've mentioned that. We can see that before very long they will be talking NPC characters based on AI.
Yeah.
It would help to know how satisfied you are with that joke.
Goodbye, Google. Google.
Set everybody off.
Google is launching her.
Hey Siri, you about there at all?
These results on search.
Hey Alexa.
That was Google. Okay, no, here's on screen here. This is what the post there. A lawyer facing sanctions after he used Chat GPT to write a brief riddle with fake citations. Yeah. I'm not taking sides.
Yeah, but there was a lawyer who was on Zoom dressed as a kitten. So I mean, lawyers.
No, I say I'm not taking sides here, but because actually I agree with everything you say. But let's say I am walking around a museum.
Yep.
virtually or otherwise, and I ask an AI for information about something, right?
Yep.
Now, it's got the whole world of recorded information, at least digitally recorded, to source to
Yep.
give me the information I need. But amongst that information, through no fault of the AI I'm using, there's a lot of fake information. And the Chat GPT has no certain way of distinguishing between the fake info and the real info in order to give you your answer. So how are we going to cope as time progresses with a trust factor, name that the
Yeah, that's
GPI
true.
will name that the GPI Chat GPT, sorry, will only source real information in a world where there is already a collision of real and fake.
But
To
can I
we
can
don't
I
know.
just give you an analogy though,
Yeah.
to that? If you've, I don't know if you've ever been to Jerusalem, but if you go to Jerusalem and you hire a tour guide, the first thing they do is ask you what religion you have. Because according to what religion you say you have, if you say you're a Catholic, or you say you're a Protestant, or you say you're an Orthodox or a Muslim, whatever it may be, the guide will modify the story that they tell you about the city of Jerusalem according to what they assume are your preconceived ideas. So we
Yeah.
this algorithm, if you want to call it that, has existed for a very, very long time. That people tend to want to hear the things that that fit with their views. So I mean, I don't really think that we can blame that on the internet. That was me. Sorry.
No.
Um,
No, I mean,
because that's just part of life, I think, isn't it? I
yeah.
don't know if you guys
Well,
agree
you
with
look at,
that.
I look at social media and things like that, and the mess Facebook and now Twitter have really made of the world. In my opinion, everything that was great about them has been hijacked. And there's one thing I've learned over time, and that is the people with the loudest voices, right, are always the ones who think they're the underdog, right? People who are comfortable or fairly secure in their beliefs and their opinions do not tend to argue very loudly about them. They just carry on. But people, people who have something to shout about really tend to shout. And very often, these people will make up things. It happens every day in the real world here now. And to offer a translation in Italian and English and French of the same article to people, albeit with a couple of little mistakes, is one thing. So the tour guide who can find out, I don't know about religion, but can find out a bit about the person you're giving a guide to. When I used to teach many years ago now, Photoshop, oddly enough, in the early days, right? I have 4 people usually, maybe less, on a 3-day, class that taught them everything basically. But the first thing I would do, I mean, apart from making sure they knew how to use copy paste and the obvious things before they attended something so advanced, was to actually get an idea of what they would be doing with it. And you'd have an art director sitting next to a texture designer, sitting next to a printer, sitting next
Right.
to an artist. So the function of the 4 people who come to the class was actually very different. But I certainly would find out what their interest was so that I could taper rather, the class to each 4 of them. I couldn't do that with a whole classroom of 30 people, but I could do it when I have a private session of 4 people. It means you set them similar. They each do similar things, but you give them
But then that
you
that
give them
raises a quick. That's really interesting because that raises another question I want to ask Ernest. I don't know if he knows the answer to this. So suppose Mal is teaching a course, maybe not on Photoshop, but on Vincent van Gogh, and
yeah
the teacher Mal, he only wants his students to look at be given a certain amount of information, use only a certain number of sources. Can Chat GPT be made to do that, so it only goes to certain sources?
But as I understand it, there are ways in which you sort of prompt it and give it there is characters that you can do to give it an initial response. I mean, in the same way as Total was sort of saying, in the style of a Glaswegian man
Yeah.
respond to this. You can sort of limit what or the way in which it's going to present it. So you can, to a certain extent. I think we're only in early days here. I think the interesting thing that you mentioned there is about sort of fake information. The other part of, as I say, it's a large language model. It's essentially trying to sort of continue the conversation going based on what it's read so far, in the same way as your text message would try and anticipate the next word. And at the moment, at least, Chat GPT doesn't like to say, I don't know the answer to that. They don't want it to say, I don't know. So it will hallucinate. If it can't actually come up with the right answer, it will come up with something that's plausible. I mean, I think, and the definition, when you put the definition up earlier on, was about it using natural language, plausible natural language. That doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate. It means it's plausible. And so, quite often it will hallucinate, and it will come up with what looks like a totally plausible answer to the question that you have posed. But then, don't we all do that? And doesn't this actually bring into the whole sort of mix as to when we engage with people in conversation, how often are we elaborating on or expanding on, or maybe going off on a slightly, we're not necessarily, we do it ourselves. We hallucinate, and so it's doing what a human would do.
It's like you mentioned the plausibility in a natural language. I mean, natural language means it's machine, but it's imitating to the best of its ability something that makes it sound plausible, but the plausibility is not in the content. And I think of things like fairy tales and stories that have come from prehistory that are passed down over generations. We reinterpret them with every telling.
Yes.
Nobody knows for sure where some of these strange myths and things came from, and we've lost track of the truth because of, it's a myth, but is there truth in it?
Do you agree with that, Tosha?
Well, I don't know. I have had really some different experiences with Chat GPT, because I've had asked some things. The chat responded that he did not know anything about the subject, so that was very.
Oops.
And also when there was one thing I don't quite remember, and it doesn't matter. There was something wrong in it, and I responded to directly in chat and saying, He said, I'm sorry, I was mistaken there, and let me reconsider it, and then later on he gave the correct. And I thought
that's really interesting.
If you imagine the huge amount of data it's referencing for it to actually be able to say, I don't know, it's kind of...
Well, I guess we're just in early days in all of this. So it's just, I'm curious, obviously this is something that's going to involve the whole planet. But since this is Inworld Review and it's talking about opensim, I just wonder, Ernest, what do you see as happening in the next, say, 2-3 years? We've seen such jumps in opensim, with the use of NPCs. Then we've got all this animesh, we've got all the different kind of mesh builds that we didn't have before, the VAR region. So do you see this as being a significant change in opensim, or just a toy?
I think I can see it starting to take off. I think with what Total's done so far, she has the disembodied voice of a character. I can see that being combined with animesh and NPCs to actually give it some person. I mean, you mentioned that when you were having that interview, you were looking at the box. You wanted to know where this disembodied voice was coming from.
Yes.
And I think when we start to put a face on it with expressions, I think that I can see that's the way it's going to go, and I think that will be the sort of like Animesh NPC Mark version 2.0 will be having that artificial intelligence there. That being said, I think we could see quite a crackdown on this. I think they're now starting to realise, and I don't know what the genie is out of the bottle, as it were. But there are a lot of governments and around the world now sort of looking about, what controls do we put on this?
That's right. It was banned in Italy for like 3
Yeah, I
weeks
had
or
that.
something.
I just had that on the screen a minute ago.
Yeah.
It's back again. I have another question too. Back to the article that I gave you its definition of itself. I put the English translation at the side here, and I could have, if we'd had something to do with it, I could have actually simply hit this button.
The world of digital media is fantastic. Chases waves of popularity on the topics of the day.
There you go.
And there are even those around every password of the moment who offer training courses, internship, workshop, and so on. A world made of raffle. And people who try to make
So exactly what Ernest was saying about taking the chat and turning it into a voice.
Have rushed to artificial intelligence. Now the scuffle is recognized a mile away.
How do I stop it?
Talk about serious things because there are many real
Okay, there we are. Now that actually is serious, because the question I was going to ask relates to what Ernest was saying. If we have, if we extend the idea of like great NPCs in world who can use and learn using Chat GPT or whatever, and can also speak in voice. In other words, I set a speech operation going there, and instead of using my notepad at the side here, I would use it in world when I'm logged in the chat window. It wouldn't be a conversion being done in the virtual world. That would be done on my CPU by a separate program, but it would read the text from the chat and actually speak it. And with suitable voice on, then the people in world can hear it. So suddenly you've got an NPC who hopefully doesn't sound quite as bad as that one did, actually able to be a tour guide and actually speak that information when you ask them, tell me a bit about Van Gogh. They'll look it all up. They'll give you the answer, but they'll also, that answer will be scannable and turned into actual, a female voice, for example, if it's a female avatar. And
I don't know if this is part of what you're saying there, Mal, but you can quite imagine that somebody who's maybe on their own, and so many people in opensim, they're building, they're busy, and perhaps for whatever reason they spend quite a lot of time in their house on their own. So it would be wonderful to have a companion who's actually an avatar who can actually have a sort of a kind of conversation with you. While you're, it would resolve a lot of the thing that people say, oh, there's nobody here. Well, you can always have a virtual companion with you. But my other question, and maybe Ernest knows the answer to this, maybe Tosha too, if you've both been using it. I got the impression from what Total told me was that it's it costs more money when you're running these Chat GPTs. If they have, for example, if you turn on the memory, she had some that she said, well, these are freebies, and this one instead, this costs more depending on how many minutes you use it. So is this something that's an issue for using Chat GPT in world?
I mean, it's using a massive amount of resource. Yes, absolutely. And as you quietly say, there are different models that you can use, and the more clever the model, the more computing power it takes, and therefore the more credits it costs to do it. Now, at the moment, because people like OpenAI are trialing this, a lot of this is free. It will be monetized at some stage, and then we'll start to see money involved in this and costs involved in the different models. So yeah, I mean, there will be a cost factor to it, definitely.
I think you're right on that, but I think this has been happening in a lot of subjects. That something new comes up. For example, mesh came up, and I thought terrible. First of all, you sit alone at home to work on it instead of doing it in world where you can talk with people and all that. And the other thing is then you will have some people doing Mesh and doing them very well, and then they sell their projects, their
I don't
products,
know
for
where.
example, in Second Life, and then there will be some that can afford it and others that cannot. And then the ones that can afford it, you will see it right away. They are, well dressed and beautiful avatars, and
Yeah.
the others that look just normal. But it has
Right.
proven it is not that way, because I don't know. I barely ever go to SL, but in opensim, for example, it has proven not to be that way, because you can practically get anything you want, everything you need, even in another way without paying for it, because you always find people that will make it. And I think something like that, not exactly which way I don't know exactly, but something like that will happen also
Uh,
with GPT. Oh, I never remember that stupid word. Well, with that with artificial intelligence, that there will always be ways around it so that you
Mm.
don't have to pay so much for it, and
Oh, gotcha.
I,
I
Yeah, because that's really what Total told me. She said, "Oh, it cost me so many credits, but because I said, well, could you just leave it on?" And obviously, her sim is not a sim that people visit very often. She said, well, you just can't leave it on and just let people come and go all the time, because it's linked to, my own private computer, and plus it costs money. So I'm just thinking, I suppose in time, all these kind of
I,
the monetary
I
wrinkles
think
yeah,
will
that,
be.
I'm
yes, of
wondering.
course, but I think
Yeah,
also that there will be ways around, so that you
Right.
don't have to pay so much for it anymore. And the same with, with the programs.
it's like you
No
get.
matter what program, for example, like Photoshop or anything like that, there are always ways around on the market, or alternatives, like for instead of Photoshop, you can get GIMP instead of the
Mm.
whole Word thing of Microsoft. You have the
You have
open
yeah,
source
you have
programs which you
you have
don't pay for, and like that. You have to find out, and I think that will happen.
At the moment, it seems to be
Gotcha.
open AI that's behind a lot of this, and
Right.
I don't think it's going to be
Yeah.
open for that much longer. But I'd like to ask Ernest, actually, if, in particular, Ernest may know this, and that is that um, I'm reminded of the big thing about Bitcoin, and
Yeah.
more importantly, the big thing about Bitcoin mining,
Yes.
and the actual cost of that Bitcoin mining, which was almost an invisible cost. That is a huge cost, but nobody was really paying for it
Mm.
directly. And a
Mm.
lot of people who were mining Bitcoin were hijacking people's home computers
Mm.
to actually mince the
Wow.
coins overnight.
Yes.
Now, I also wonder if it would be possible. So let's say you run your own OpenSim simulator on the machine at home, whether you'd be able to have a lightweight copy of Chat GPT that had its own memory and only linked to the master. I don't know if it's a database or what, but only connected to the big thing when it
Mm.
was absolutely necessary. So if
Almost
you
like caching it.
if you
Yeah.
can run your own OpenSim server, could you integrate your own OpenAI server?
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah.
word into it? I don't know if you know. I don't.
I don't. I mean, as you say, I mean, OpenAI has grabbed all the headlines because they've been first there, but they are one of many of these large language models that are out there. I mean, Microsoft and Google are busily, rapidly trying to catch up because they've stolen a bit of a march on them. So there will be others out there. I mean, I guess that another sort of comparison I would draw in the open sim world is Shoutcast and Icecast for for DJs and live music, and translation engines. We live in a global world where we are talking to people with all different languages. So we turn to translators as a way of which is fantastic. In real time we can talk with people from all over the world and it will translate. Now take that into an open AI situation of being able to get it to in real time, you know, for you to be able to talk, for it to then translate, and then for it to talk, you know, take that back out as a language. I think, you know, we'll start to see those sorts of tools. So I don't think it's just for NPCs. I think it will also be helping, you know, being the Hitchhiker's Guide Babelfish Mark II of being able to in real time allow us to talk with people in our own language, and we wouldn't know that the other person wasn't talking.
I've also heard it's going to help us talk to animals. There are researchers using Chat GPT to analyze data
yes,
sets
yes.
for
I would
whales.
love to talk to. I would love to talk to dolphins.
I have
Yep.
I mean, they are.
I have recently read an article about researchers looking for the language of whales and interpreting it by artificial intelligence. I thought that was super interesting.
Me too.
That they're coming close to, and that would be maybe the first time that there would be really an understanding on both sides of what whales are talking about.
So profound.
So that's perfect, isn't it? Can you imagine that you're going to come in opensim and you're going to go into an ocean region, and there's going to be whales on that region, animish whales, and you're going to be able to talk to them. That is absolutely perfect, isn't it? For
I have this horrible feeling that, yeah, when we actually manage to master that, we will ask a dolphin, and it's just going to say, so long and thanks for the fish.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, they're far more intelligent than us. Apparently, they just hide underwater, so they don't have to piss around with it. I would point out, actually, by the way, it's that in translation, that article in Italian is a bit odd. I don't know. It seems to be referring to a guarantor here, but it's saying this guarantor has done its job neither more or less in an impeccable logic of safeguarding users' personal data, enshrined now in the GDPR, right, which is here in Europe. The European legislation came into force on the 25th of May. 2018, and is the most advanced in the world on this issue that has many countries copying us. That's Italian speaking, I think. But it does, I mean, it's one final issue we can't avoid, whether we're talking about in world affairs or not. The European legislation about what OpenAI can source, for example, is much more restricted than what in America it can nick anything it can find. But in Europe, I'm not sure about Britain because we're sort of in and out, and always we probably will be. But in Europe, some information is not allowed to be available online. It's a bit odd because I was thought of it, you know, the world's information resource was the web, but of course, as we now know, that's that information resource includes fake things as well.
Well, not only that, Mal, I mean, for example, as you said, information is different. In Europe, your private information is protected. In America, not so much. So if somebody knows your name, your first name, your last name, and where you live, even just the town, they could probably find you. Now imagine what that means for somebody who has a stalker. Or somebody who has some other, you know, situation where they would really prefer to keep their private life private. So it is definitely a two-edged sword.
I mean, a large language model is reading the internet. Now, you know, it's public domain. How do you can't stop a human reading the internet, so why should you be able to stop an artificial intelligence reading the internet? I do think it brings into, and the thing that I find is, I do think we need almost like an Asimov, you know, 3 laws of robotics sort of situation of, we are in that situation where, you know, we can't let it do harm to humans. It has to obey the instructions of humans, and it must, you know, protect itself unless it evades, it breaks the first law. There needs to be something like that, because when you take, as you say, all this fake information and real information and a personality, as we've seen with Angus and the other people that we met there, taking all that information, put in the wrong hands, this could be generating fake Twitter posts and
Yeah.
political points and blogs and stuff like that. And ahead of an election,
Oh God.
Yes.
you could be having thousands and millions
Yeah.
of.
No, that could never happen, Ernest. I
Well,
can't believe that could ever.
No,
I'm just
no.
kidding.
So as I say, it's just going to put that sort of fake news into
The hyperdrive.
Do you think on a minor point here? I mean, I quite agree with you. I mean, Asimov's laws of robotics is an ideal template blueprint as we move into an era of robotics and computers controlling robots. So, I mean, I would say those laws, although they were created for fiction, are sort of sacrosanct. But do you think we should consider OpenAI and similar things to that to actually have the facets of a robot, so that one could use the laws of robotics to control what they are able to do? Do you think, so let's say somebody invents a robot and, it would never be able to harm a human being, supposedly. It can only serve humans. Yeah. Do you think, presumably there must be some way of enforcing that code into the low-level software or in the robot's hardware? Do you think the same could apply to OpenAI?
I find some fantastic benefits to it, but I've been listening to the Sam Altman who started OpenAI, and he's been sort of commenting on this as well, and is really consider it. I mean, when you think about it, they are now at the position where it does some profound things and does some strange things. They produced an artificial brain. We don't understand how the human brain works, do we? Really? There's lots of people that are doing lots of poking about and think they understand a little bit about how the human brain works.
Rather a lot more wires than we count together.
Yeah, exactly. There's more connections than there are atoms in the universe and all that. Yeah. But they admit they don't really know how it does what it does.
Yeah.
But it's become so complex. They don't really understand what it does. It doesn't have arms and legs to harm a human, does it? I mean, it's got access to the internet, for goodness sake. We've got our power generation grid and now our nuclear arms and everything else are controlled by computers, and it's plugged into the internet.
Yeah, I mean, if dictators can control, threaten the world with, well, I don't know, virtual warfare. I mean, I suppose it's OpenAI could do the same thing if you plugged into that information.
This is getting really deep.
You had the guy at OpenAI. He testified before Congress. What was it, a week or two ago? And he said the same thing, didn't he? He just had Congress in a fit because he couldn't guarantee that it wasn't going to be the end of the world.
He used the parable of the sparrows, which was the parable of the sparrows goes that all the sparrows get together and they say, it's a lot of work actually going out and getting our food every day. What about if we actually got hold of an owl egg and we hatched the owl, and the owl could go off and get all of our food and bring it back to us, and we would never have to work again.
And I was sorry, everybody.
And on that owl note,
I knew this was coming. I just heard James about to interrupt with something when I was in the middle of that, and then I thought, hang on, I better. I got the feeling that was going to happen, but also I want to actually ask James, particularly because obviously he's been behind the scenes a lot here. James, have you got any thoughts on this whole, volcano of thought?
The thing I thought was most interesting with Sorbet was how the avatars or the chat bots respected each other in conversation. They stopped, they started, and I'm really curious how it did that, because we have that problem in Zoom, we have that problem in virtual worlds, because we don't have the physical cues that someone's going to start speaking that we have in real life. And that conversation was really quite elegant, I thought.
Yeah, we're reading it out. I thought it was just kind of a bit of comedy, you know.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was just, it was wonderful. I think it probably has something to do with the text itself. For example, um, you will often take a cue from me when I'm talking. When I've asked a question, I will fall silent for a few microseconds, and that you take that as a cue to reply, whether it's virtual or just on audio only. And so I think the Chat GTP sort of one will stop, and then that will cue the other one to take over, or it will cue there's or somebody to ask a new question to get it going again. So I think it's the pause in that chain of information that is the cue to switch from one bot to the other. But I don't know for sure. I just have a hunch it's working like that.
Yeah,
What
and there
we'll
were
have to do is have
13,
another
13
show in a
bots.
few
Yeah,
months. Yeah, maybe we'll have another show in a few months' time, and we'll have found out the answers to these
that would be
questions.
good.
So
Right.
We will.
viewers, come back and watch another show.
I
Hmm.
think it
Yeah.
will take a
This,
little longer than just a couple of months to
Oh, well,
find
I'm
I don't
optimistic.
all the
know. I don't know.
consequences.
Yeah,
Things
yeah.
can things just go so fast these days. I mean, we'll probably be on a new planet by the time our next season comes around. You know. But no, this has been wonderful, and actually, I feel today's been great because it's been a real sort of fairly deep talk show with very little of our normal visual accompaniment. You know, and we've nailed this, and yeah.
Oh, lovely
It,
guests. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
both of
thank
you,
you.
Tosha and Ernest, for really interesting insights into this subject.
Thank you,
And
Hammond.
not to forget Satan and Angus and all the rest of them. We're
Oh,
going
also, of
to
course,
Right,
them
right.
yes.
into. Yeah. Okay, well that's wonderful. We better get out of here. As you heard, the alarms are all going off. Sort of the showers will come on in a minute, like the fire alarm. You know, and we'll get wet if we don't get out of here. So I'd like to formally thank Ernest and Tosha for being here, for being
It's been lovely
our
and
specialists in
most
the war.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it has really been a great conversation. And of course, I would thank James for all the not pulling the plug on us. Maybe a laugh. I mean,
Just subtle
having a laugh.
reminders, a subtle nudge.
Subtle. You call that noise subtle?
Well, and to just one final word from me
Yeah,
about
sure.
this thing is that I think I can understand the problems that, for example, Ernest has with the power of artificial intelligence that can be gained over humans. But I think at the moment we really have much more serious things we have to face because
That's
Oh
true.
yeah.
with all these things, the climate change and the wars and everything, that is a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. We need. Yeah, maybe AI is going to be quite a significant issue in the other issues that we face. But
That's true. Of course, this is our final show of this season. We're going to take a break for the summer, aren't we, Mal? Just for
we are. We'll be dabbling
Well,
around doing a few things. You will actually see a bit of us, but there won't be another Inworld review until the beginning of September.
yes.
And I should say, actually, I think we need to beg you both, if we can do it, you and James, there is something we completely forgot, and I'd like you to summarize it very quickly, Thirza. And that is, by the time we get back in September, we'll only be about a month away from something called HIE.
Yes,
So I thought
which
we
is the
should.
Hypergrid International Expo. That's a conference. Most people are familiar with the annual OSCC conference. That's a conference in English for opensim, where there are many talks about projects that are happening all over the various grids in opensim. And you have to speak English to be in that, obviously, because it's an English language conference. So the HIE, the Hypergrid International Expo, is a conference where the speakers can use their own language, which may be French or German or Spanish or Italian, and in the future maybe other languages like Portuguese and Dutch and so forth. And it's an opportunity for people to come to the conference, give their talk, And you may say, well, I don't speak any of those languages. I only speak English. How am I going to be able to follow it? Well, you can follow it because as they're speaking, you can join a group on the grid and you will see essentially subtitles in English or in all the other languages that tell you what the speaker is saying. So it's a little bit like going to a foreign film, but you're in opensim and you're seeing somebody speaking live in their own language, telling you and showing you, probably with lots of visual aids, how they are doing their project or the story of their grid or some scripting innovation that they've come up with or something like that. And Mal's showing up there, our auditorium. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be on October the 7th and 8th of this year. So a few weeks away.
But do get in touch at the earliest. Basically, I mean, we're firing ahead on this, and by the time we come back here with this show, we'll be falling over ourselves at the last minute, really.
That's right. There'll be plenty of ways you can get hold of us through social media. So if you're on Facebook or you use MeWe or you're here on Discord, or if you see any of us in Mal, James, or I, and including Tosha, if you see us in World, ask us about it, and we'll be very happy to tell you how to get involved, either as a member of the audience or as a presenter.
Right.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we can now end the show again, can't we? No, so seriously, I just realised we ought to get that in because we won't have an opportunity, of course, for some weeks now. So, yeah, I'd like to thank James and Thirza especially, for being so much an integral part of this show. And 3 months is just gonna, I don't know, it's either gonna be a hell of a long time or it's just gonna fly by. You never know. But can't wait to get back here again, maybe with a bit of fresh paint on the proceedings in some way. Who knows? Who knows? So, as I say, thanks to Thirza and James for that. And of course, thanks for today's guests and all the guests we've had on this season too. And don't forget, Safari on Wednesdays. Only a couple of weeks to go on that too, I think. But yep, we'll see you in the autumn, one way or another. So I wish you all a very good morning, a very good afternoon, very good evening, or a very good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And 3 months' time, yeah, whatever. We're off. Bye for now.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you all.